We talked last week in Tampa. Then you drove down to Miami. You hightailed it down there. No doubt speeding the whole way, but we won't talk about that. And here's what, and I'm sure you've heard this, Pete Prisco has liked to say about Tua throughout Tua's tenure. No fire in the belly. By that, he meant he didn't seem like a natural-born leader. He's soft-spoken, so on and so forth. Tua suffered the hip injury midway through his final year at Alabama. Was up and down early on year one. Year two, I thought he was really good until he got the concussions. And now we're in year three, year two with new coach Mike McDaniel. And this roster is stacked offensively.
Four now, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is it year four for Tua?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Time's flying. Okay, thank you. Year four for Tua. Last year, I thought he did pretty well before the concussions. Year two with Mike McDaniel, the coach who was the run game coordinator from San Francisco. This offense is stacked. You saw Tua in person. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, he is physically looks bigger. You don't realize how thick he is through his hips and his lower. He talked a lot about down there, but talked about taking jiu-jitsu classes and learning how to fall so he doesn't bang his head against the turf to maybe prevent the concussions. But I don't know how you do that when you can't see a 6'5", 260-pound guy beaming your backside. I don't know how you're going to fall. You're going to fall in sections as soon as he hits you. But just like Trevor Lawrence, he looks very decisive. His arm actually looks stronger, very accurate with his throws. Totally different feeling than what we saw initially last year. We saw him in the spring when we went down to mini camp, and you can see from spring to where he's at right now. He is, if he can stay healthy, he is definitely going to be one of the top tier quarterbacks in the AFC.
So, look, the conversation starts with Josh Allen in Buffalo, and then probably Aaron Rodgers in New York because of the hype train with Aaron Rodgers. What are the percent chance you give the Dolphins to win in this division?
I like the Dolphins now. I really liked them before Jalen Ramsey went down.
Yeah, but that's MCL. Is that what it was?
No, he had a meniscus.
So that's short term.
Well, here's the difference. Okay, and I don't know because I don't know. They say he may not come back until December.
So I didn't know that.
Just experiencing that type of injury, when you tear your meniscus, if it's just a clean out or it's just partly shaven off some of the meniscus, you can come back in maybe 4 weeks. But if you tore that meniscus down the middle, they actually go in there and sew the meniscus back together. That takes time.
And,
I'm assuming that why they're saying potentially he won't be back until December is because that's the type of surgery that he had.
Well,
but I don't have that for a fact. I'm just going off experience.
Reading between the lines, yeah. Meniscus is, I think it basically serves as a cushion between your shin bone and your knee, if I recall correctly. Again, not a doctor. Don't take my medical advice. Rick is shaking his head. Two-time ACL survivor speaking.
Seriously, a shin bone? I haven't heard that.
Your shin. I didn't say shin bone. I said your shin.
You said shin bone.
All right. What do you call it?
Huh?
You heard me.
There's a tibia. There's a fibula. There's a
tibia and fibula. That's what it is. Two idiots talking about human anatomy here. I should have stopped. You gave a very insightful answer about the meniscus, which is actually useful, and then I had to pipe up. I apologize. Debo, delete that on the YouTube. Yeah. Dr. Nick here. Debo has the I'm a doctor gift. Debo notes that these numbers won't mean anything to you, Rick, but Debo notes that the Dolphins are plus 290 to win the division, which means that if you are a Dolphins fan, Vegas thinks that you're crazy and you can make some money if you have a lot of confidence in the Dolphins. You can bet $100 to win $290. And by comparison, the Bills are at plus 120. So you bet $100 to win $120, and the Jets are plus 250. So 100 to win 250. So you're still like, would you pick the Dolphins to win, or you're not quite willing to go that far?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I would put my money, if I bet more than $1, which I never do.
Yeah.
I would put my money on the Dolphins.
And this is because Tua, of course, but do you think it's going to be Mike McDaniel leaning into this run game, which will help Tua, obviously?
I believe that. I believe that with Vic Fangio as the X-factor on defense. And I also believe that Mike McDaniel, if everything he learned his first time as a rookie head coach and some of the mistakes that he made, I think he will grow as a head coach. But to go down the hall and have Vic Fangio there to bounce ideas off or to ask questions on a guy who's been in that position, I think will pay off huge dividends for the Miami Dolphins.
No, that's a great point, and that's probably, you could argue that Fangio is the most important offseason acquisition they made.
That's by far.
Probably more important than a healthy Jalen Ramsey if you have a different defensive
Well,
coordinator.
it's nice to have someone to cover, but yeah.
That does help. All right, speaking of which, look, you drafted, you only had four picks, and it wasn't until the second round that you picked in your first selection.
Are you sure? Did they have 5 or 4?
1, 2, 3, 4. I think I had 4 on here. You can
Okay.
double check for me. But their first selection late in the second round was Cam Smith, the cornerback out of South Carolina, who, I don't know, he didn't live up to the hype that I thought. I know there were some maturity concerns off the field. Whatever. He's now in camp in Miami. He's going to have to play a lot of football. What are the expectations for a rookie cornerback, even one who's athletic as Cam Smith, when he has to replace someone like Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah, when we were down there at mini camp, you can see him. You can see the athleticism, but you can see him struggling a little bit with understanding the scheme, understanding the concepts. You've seen him take strides when we were down there last week. He did get his hands on a couple of balls. You can see the athleticism. You can see he can play man coverage. To me, it was just the awareness in zone, and I think that's coming. The more comfortable he gets in the defensive scheme.
Hey, Rick, is it fair to say that it's tougher for rookies, defensive backs, cornerbacks in particular, to play zone than man? Because man, all you're doing is covering your dude.
Yeah, I got that cat. It's called cat coverage.
Yeah.
But in zone, yeah, because of the different concepts and understanding where you have help over top, where you don't, with the nick, where your help is inside, what leverage you're playing on a receiver. So if you're in a certain zone coverage, you may have to play inside leverage versus outside leverage. It's just a lot more complicated than people think in zone coverage.
And to your point about the other positions we've talked about, especially quarterback, you have to think about all these things. At edge rusher too, you're not playing football, you're doing the math, and then the next thing you know, Calvin Ridley Jr. is running past you, or Tyreek Hill in practice is running past you because you're trying to get from A to C, and
Right.
you get stuck on B, and Tyreek's hit 100 miles per hour, and that's a wrap.
Yep. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And once they're able to understand the concepts and understand the leverage or the technique that's being taught and do not have to think about it, that's when you start to see them excel, because they can play without going by the numbers and then just utilize their athletic skill set.
So, like when you see a wide open blown coverage, typically sometimes that's the mistake. Like someone's playing zone and everyone else is playing man, or vice versa. What are the expectations in the regular season when games are on the line? If you're like, I don't know what kind of coach Vic Fangio is in terms of whether he's a yeller or he's just calmly talks to people. But when you come to the sideline, if you're Cam Smith and you blow cover and you get an 80-yard touchdown, how do you it's going to happen? Like, what is the approach in terms of dealing with that in game? Because you don't want to crush a young player's confidence, but you also need to start making plays.
No, I think it's more, and nowadays maybe different than the old school when you used to get a foot up your rear end. And my dad was a old school coach with me and my brother. I can tell you stories that I don't even want to get into. God rest his soul, but nowadays you can't do some of the things that they were able to do back in the day.
Right.
But I think it's just teaching and learning, and you're hoping, to me, if you make a mistake, hopefully you're making a lot of them now, that you can utilize that as a teaching tool. And sometimes when you make a mistake, it makes you a better player because then you know not to do this. But you have to get corrected in order to get better, in my opinion.
And that all goes back to the pre-draft process. Can this player take coaching, and how kind of coaching does he take, and how I would imagine you have conversations about how best to coach this player if we do draft him, whether good cop, bad cop, whatever, right?
Yeah, no, there's some players, and that's why you do all these psychological testing. On this guy's going to respond to this type of coaching. This guy's going to respond to this type of coaching. Some guys need a foot in their rear end, and that's how they respond. Other guys, if you do that, then they go in the tank and you can't get them out. So there's different ways. And we used to get individual reports from our psychological test results explaining to the coaches what's the best way to get to this guy, what's the best way he learns, what's the best way to coach him. And hopefully it's not like back in the day where everybody's sitting in a room, you're all getting coached the same way. Nowadays, it's almost like you have to have an individualized plan on who you're coaching and how he's going to respond.
Yeah, it's like my wife's a teacher. You have to have an individual education plan for each kid.
Yep.
Or you hear about it from the principal. The principal's the owner. All right, let's talk about Devon Achane. Achane, I'm the name guy. I think is it Devon Achane? I always forget. He told us too. Achane. What's his role going to be? Because he's an absolute firecracker, undersized, but he will run between the tackles. He offers a little bit in the pass game. We know that running is going to be incredibly important to what they do. They have Mostert. They have Jeff Wilson, both from San Francisco. They have Ahmed, who's been there for a few years out of Washington, Myles Gaskin, and then they have Achane. So I feel like Achane's going to get a lot of looks. He feels like a Tyreek Hill that can line up in the backfield because of his speed, and he makes that offense that much more explosive.
Yeah, no, you can see the speed and the explosiveness. And when he hit some of the creases in the running game, he was at the second level or on top of the secondary before you even knew it. And his ability to drop his weight and show as elusive as he is going to have a lot of explosive plays. Now, I think they will get him the ball in a lot of different ways, not only as a runner, but jet sweeps, maybe some things coming out of the slot, quick hitting screens to get him in space so he can utilize his speed and athleticism.
And, some quarterbacks aren't good at throwing short accurately and on time. That's one of the things Tua excels at. He gets the ball out quickly. He usually gets the ball in a catchable position for the.
It is amazing when you sit there and watch practice how quickly the ball comes out of Tua's hands. And that is on quick screens and all. The whole offense seems like, let's just get the ball out, get it in the playmakers' hands, and let's have a track meet and let them do their deal. But how quick the ball comes out of Tua's hands in this offense and the way this offensive scheme's set up, it's set up for all these speed, athletic playmakers to get the ball in their hands as quickly as possible, although they're going to take their shots downfield and do a lot of normal things. But the quicker you can get the ball into some of these guys' hands, that's going to lead to a lot of explosive plays.
Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Mostert and Wilson are burners. Achane's a burner. Excuse me. And Tua looks to be in form. So great news for Miami. Rick's a Miami guy. We'll see how this works out.
If Tua's in quarterback. If not, then it's going to be a different season.
Yeah, fair enough. You can say that about anyone. Mike White is also now in Miami after spending time last year with the Jets, where he outplayed Zach Wilson, but that's a conversation for another time. Let's go to